please do keep in mind before you watch this video or before you go, debate politics on Twitter or whatever it is that you want to do, please keep in mind that whether they're a Democrat or a Republican or anything else, nobody in this universe decided to be brought into it. Okay, we all just find ourselves in this place together, and we have to try and make the best of it. Love y'all, okay?
This video is sponsored by Kraft Macaroni and Cheese. Kraft. We use child actors just like this one to trick you into feeding our junk food to your kids guilt-free.
So to start all of this off, I just want you to think through everything that could possibly be a point of debate in U.S. politics, right? And there's countless examples, so we're only going to go through a few.
Everything from border security to transgender bathroom use to reducing our arsenal of nuclear weapons to lobbying to industrial farming practices to addressing our diminishing freshwater supply.
How deepfakes will make even raw audio and video questionable sources.
To whether we should end the circulation of legends. To our arms sales to the Saudis. To whether Santa Claus is black or white. To gerrymandering. To gay marriage. To academia's publishing norms and incentives. And the reason that some people care about this is that a lot of conspiracies trace to redacted junk science that was at some point published in an established journal. To PC culture. To whether college athletes are underpaid. To high-frequency trading. To abortion. To funding research to stop diseases from evolving faster than our medicines can cure them. To marijuana legalization. To whether parents should be able to give their infants real permanent tattoos.
To runaway artificial intelligence.
To corporate subsidies. To healthcare. To our military's presence in more than half of the world's countries. To food stamps. To whistleblowing. To whether members of Congress should be able to trade stock. To replacing Confederate memorabilia in public places. To foreign aid. To our voting system. Should it be first past the post? Rank choice something else. To free speech. To the national debt. To school choice. To advertising. Some people think advertising is a stream of addiction reinforcing status anxiety inducing software porn targeted at each of us. So we should regulate it more.
And there's thousands and thousands of more examples.
So one of the major questions that this series of videos is going to work at is this. Why is it that some issues rise to the top of our political conversation and are talked about all the time, whereas others stay below and are hardly ever mentioned? And I'll argue that many of the issues that define liberalism and conservatism don't actually matter all that much, right? That there's more important issues which both ideologies ignore, which should be in the place of the issues which they emphasize.
In other words, many issues outside of the debate between left and right matter far more than those within it. So you cannot just assert, without any reasons or argument, that one issue matters more than others, right? There has to be something that makes some issues matter more than others to you, right? There has to be some criteria, like some reasons why. So in these videos, I'm going to argue that neither liberalism nor conservatism can be tied together by a good set of criteria. Both ideologies are just scatter shots of issues, right? There's no real glue, no real reasons holding them together. So I want to flesh this out just a little more. So if you're on the left, your list of political concerns looks something like this. And if you're on the right, your list looks something like this. And these two lists dominate US politics. But you can imagine countless other lists that look nothing like either of these, but are just as reasonable, if not more reasonable. And so I'm just going to give one simple example. And by the way, this is not my own political viewpoint. This is just an example. So this list emphasizes a few issues that feel right-wing-ish, and a few that kind of sort of feel left-wing-ish. I mean, maybe not really. The left doesn't talk about those things too much. One that's opposed by most politicians, regardless of their ideology, but supported by most normal people, regardless of their ideology. And two that are outside of the debate between left and right, even though they matter a lot more than many issues within it. And you might even put factory farming among those, because that's hardly ever discussed. So I want you to notice a few things about this third list. So the first is it's definitely neither left nor right. And it's not center either. center, since it emphasizes issues that even the center doesn't think about, right? The two green ones and probably factory farming too. The second is there's no internal conflict in the list, right? Even though it might feel weird to support unions and lower taxes on small businesses at the same time, there's no contradictions between those two positions. You can be for unionized businesses that aren't taxed very much. That's completely reasonable. The third is there's a common moral theme that ties some of the issues together, which is just stopping shit from hitting the fan. Right, so this person wants to stop a superbug crisis, a debt crisis, and a water crisis. Since if we continue on the path we're on now, we're going to have all three. Now, you might ask why this person didn't include climate change or nukes or pandemic preparation, since all those would follow this theme. And if they've really thought through their politics, they'd be able to give you reasons why, like, for example, they're more worried about a superbug crisis than a climate crisis. And finally, the issues on this list really do matter, right? This person doesn't give a shit about whether or not Mr. Potato Head is trans, right? None of these are the fake issues that media companies come up with just for the sake of getting clicks or views. So now ask yourself, why isn't this third list one of the defining ideologies of US politics? And notice that it's not like we all got together and spelled out the reasons why everyone should clump together into the first two lists, right? The first two ideologies.
So here's what I'm trying to say. It is odd that US politics is defined by the narrow debate between left and right, given everything we could potentially emphasize in our politics, and all the possible combinations of political views that you could hold. So my problem with the debate between left and right isn't only that it emphasizes petty issues in the place of more important ones. It's also that the debate is less of a debate than a war, like a bloody, angry yelling match between people who aren't really listening to each other. So it feels like a downward spiraling romantic relationship where people care more about winning than about the implications of their actual views. Winning has become an end in and of itself in our politics.
Bubble, bubble, bubble. Bubble, bubble, bubble. Bubble, bubble, bubble. Bubble, bubble, bubble. Bubble, 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 back to real life.
Hi, everybody. So, what I'm kind of going for here is political comedy that isn't mean to anyone or isn't partisan at all. So the humor has to come from places that aren't just like making fun of people. So some friends of mine said, well, it might be funny if you do the thing that YouTubers do sometimes, where you change your voice so it's really, really high pitch. So I kind of decided, like, yeah, I'm going to do that. So just to let you know, the next clip is going to be in a really high voice. And basically I'm just saying what I was saying before, that US politics is really petty and hateful, but the voice is really, really high. So I hope you like it.
U.S. politics is a war between two sides, each of which is emotionally invested in feeling superior to the other and treats the other accordingly. And in the war, both sides ignore some of the most important issues of our time, while they maul, burn, and shank each other over comparatively petty ones.
Now, you might not agree with this as much as I do, but everyone agrees with this to some extent. Which brings up the question, why is our politics so petty and hateful? And this might sound like a really simple question, but I don't think it is at all. Which is why this entire series of videos, which is going to end up being at least 100 videos, each of which builds on the last, is all just aimed at answering this question in as much depth as possible. So one useful answer you can give to it is the interaction between human nature and our political institutions. And you can keep breaking this answer down more and more by looking at specific features of human nature and how they interact with specific features of our political institutions, right? So one example of this would be the interaction between cognitive dissonance, which is the discomfort people feel when their thoughts or beliefs conflict with each other, and the advertising model of media. So because political media companies are funded by ads, they want to maximize the amount of time that people are watching them, that people are glued to the screen. But they realize on some or another level that if they cause people dissonance, right, if they present them with information that conflicts with what they already believe, that will, drive them away from the screen. So for that reason, most of our political media just provides people with an endless stream of information that confirms and reinforces what their audiences already believe. And in doing so, they cause our politics to be more hateful, because that gives people the false impression that their side is perfect and can do no wrong, and the other side is just a bunch of dangerous imbeciles. And petty because in only focusing on issues which won't bring its audience's dissonance, it ignores so much of what we could possibly talk about. Right, but you can keep doing this on and on and on with different features of human nature and different features of our political institutions. And in some large part, that's what my videos are going to be doing. So importantly, I'm going to call the relevant features of human nature, which is to say those which actually do contribute to our politics being petty and hateful.
Tribal instincts, and only because that's the catch-all term used in the media to describe the groupish, divisive aspects of human nature.
And I do have an academic background in all of this.
This all started as a writing requirement that I needed to fulfill at the University of Michigan.
So the writing was advised by a lecturer in the cognitive science department there, which is the field my degree's in. And all the ideas in these videos are informed by the argument that I was making in that paper.
In a Planet Fitness shower. So the more you know.
So I was arguing that regardless of your political beliefs, you should be skeptical of them. Since the process that most of us, most of the time, use to form our political beliefs is flawed. And once we have our set of political views, we hold on to them because those views become part of our identities.
So most of the work for this project was in explaining the exact sense in which the process we use to form our political views is flawed. And I argued that it's flawed because it's tainted by these things that I'm calling tribal instincts.
And of course, I don't expect anyone to know what these terms mean right now.
So the fourth video in this series is going to be all about cognitive dissonance. The sixth will be on the availability heuristic, and I'll give tons of concrete examples in those videos so that it'll be impossible not to understand what these tribal instincts are and why they matter. And once you understand what they are and how they influence our politics, you'll have a far better idea of why our politics is so petty and hateful. And really, I'm not saying anything all that new or controversial here. So the view that things like cognitive dissonance and the availability heuristic distort our thinking in all sorts of domains, including politics, it's just mainstream. I'm just putting it in far more forceful terms than academics do. So along with looking into why our politics is so petty and hateful, I want to join a growing number of people who are demonstrating that political media does not have to be what it is now. So I never want my media to be anything like Fox or CNN. I don't want to be a stream of bad and angry and dark that's unable to go into any real depth about anything because it's broken up into 30-minute programs which themselves are chopped up and squished in between advertisements, and which is forced to emphasize petty issues because it needs to find enough content to fill 24 hours of news time every day. So more than anything else, our political culture is the way it is now.
That will end racism if all the winners of every race and color join together and laugh at the losers.
Because media figures think you need anger, partisanship, and hatred to sell ads and drive engagement.
Here's some evidence in the form of quotes from major media figures for the view that, in some huge part, our political culture is petty and hateful because media figures choose to feed us petty, hate-inducing content, thinking that doing so will maximize their clicks or views. Please pause to read each in order, and thank you so much.
All right, so to summarize what those quotes are getting at, so political media that's funded by ads is under constant financial pressure to be angry, confrontational, partisan, petty, and so on, like to be partisan hackery, since doing so grabs and holds people's attention. Right? And attention, when you're ad funded, is your product. You sell people's attention, your product, to advertisers who are your customers. So really, in these videos, I'm going for the exact opposite of the outraged clickbait partisan hack style that's sort of like the water we swim in. I'm trying to make calm, loving, long-form, intellectually rigorous, nonpartisan political comedy. And of course that means I'm making Eric Andre show-style political comedy. So most political comedy is just partisan bullying, right? Like you cherry pick the worst things that the other party did, and then you just bash on them. Part of the reason I'm making these videos is because I really think that political comedy could be so much more than just that. Aww. Absolutely convinced that our politics could be far more productive and loving than it is right now. And I would not have two massive piles of macaroni and cheese on my desk if I didn't really believe that in the core of my soul.
All right, I got 1 minute to take the quiz, so wish me luck. What is political comedy? I already know. Let's find out. Let's go with that one. Why is political comedy? To humiliate the people I disagree with by cherry-picking the worst things they did and bashing on them, or to stimulate people and make them more comfortable when talking about difficult things? I'm going to go with this. Political media should be angry, dark, and mean-spirited, since it's focused on tough subjects, or calm, loving, and thoughtful, since it's focused on tough subjects. I guess we'll go with this one again. And now a word from above this video's sponsor. All the arguments and ideas in these videos are completely genuine. Everything else in them is completely insane.
All right, I'm going to get serious here just for a couple of minutes. So first, I'm going to say that I understand that it might be hard, or it's going to be hard, to follow what I'm saying some of the time with like all the comedy happening, all the crazy like Eric Andre show type stuff happening. So at the end of every video, I'm going to have a clear, to-the-point summary of what I was trying to say in the video. No comedy, nothing crazy happening during those. So the point of this video was to explain what I'm going to be doing throughout the rest of the videos in this series. So first, I'm going to be arguing that our politics is petty and hateful. And I did that for a bit in this video. So I started with a slideshow of a bunch of different issues, just to give you a sense of like how many different conceivable issues there are which people could think about or care about. And I went on to argue that given there's so many different issues and so many different combinations of issues which could form your political worldview, it's pretty weird that most people are like, I'm left or I'm right, when those two ideologies only capture such a small subsection of like the total available issues there are. I mean, another way of putting that would be there are thousands of third lists, so to speak, which you could come up with, which are just as good, if not better, than both liberalism and conservatism. Especially when many really important issues, so like take Yemen, for example, are rarely ever discussed, are brought up in these left or right boxes. But the left and the right, you know, even though they rarely pay attention to the violence and the destruction in Yemen, if one single 17-year-old boy who has about a decade until his prefrontal cortex fully develops does something violent, we will fixate on it and be outraged about it for weeks. Right? So that is what I mean when I say that our politics is petty. I mean that it emphasizes petty issues in the place of more important ones, aka it emphasizes Kyle Rittenhouse in the place of Yemen, right? It is just one concrete example of that. So the second point I'm arguing for is that our politics is hateful. I didn't spend any time on that because I don't think anyone disagrees with that position at this point. Like, does anyone not think our politics is hateful? I don't know if there's a single person. So the first thing I'm going to be doing is arguing that our politics is petty and hateful, and at the same time, I'm going to be trying to explain why it is that way. And why it is that way, of course, deals with human nature. It deals with what we are, but in particular with how what we are interacts with our political institutions, right? How human nature interacts with our political institutions. And I'm going to argue, and I don't think anyone's going to disagree with this argument because there's so much research backing it up. But I'm going to argue that there's these specific features of human nature which interact with our political institutions in a really specific way. I'm going to call these specific features of human nature tribal instincts, and that interaction helps explain in some huge part why our politics is petty and hateful, right? You can't understand why without understanding what these features, what these tribal instincts are and why they matter. Now, that's not to say that everything is going to fit this mold, so some of it is just going to be like kind of sort of general punditry, but that's the big picture, right? That's what I'm going for in general. So if this summary image here makes sense to you, then we're on the same page. The details don't really matter. This is all that I was really trying to get at. All right, so I'm going to end every video with a list of things that you can do instead of just watching another YouTube video right away. So remember that down to the very last video you're being recommended, YouTube is designed to keep you on the platform as long as possible, right? It's kind of like a dementor that wants to just endlessly suck your attention, right? YouTube wants to eat your mind. So don't let it. Just do something on this list before you watch another YouTube video, whether mine or someone else's. All right, now fuck off.
All right, so 2 quick things about this YouTube channel. So first, this series of videos is the main thing I'll be doing on this channel, but it's not the only thing. So on my channel page, I'll have a playlist for the interviews I do, a playlist for reviews, mainly book reviews, one for goofy videos that are basically like Onion articles, so that they'll have headlines like, if demands not met, fast food union threatens to collectively spit in food. So if you want to watch this series of videos in order, click on the Why's Our Politics So Petty and Hateful playlist on my channel page. Also, in the miscellaneous playlist, I'll be posting a video along with this one called Why I'm Making Political Comedy This Way. Originally, that was going to be part of this video, but I decided it was a bit too drawn out, and I just needed to make it its own thing. Second, it took me a while to make this video, so some of the issues I covered haven't been touched in a while in the mainstream media. In case I ever need to make redactions or clarifications after I've posted a video, I'll do so in the editorial notes section, which I'm putting in the description of each video. Also, in hindsight, the comedy in this first one was pretty intense and out there, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing for that to be the case for the first video, but I think in future videos, it'll obscure the ideas a bit too much for the comedy to be so intense. So expect things to mellow out a little bit and be a little more artistic and a little less edgy from now on. Now, I'm still going to do crazy things. I'll definitely milk a cow at some point while I give a line, but it'll be more family friendly from now on. All right? Thanks for watching, and please, 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 please do something on this list before you watch another YouTube video. All right, love y'all.